The morning sun barely touched the horizon when Sarah Mitchell pushed her cleaning cart through the gates of Fort Braxton Naval Academy. Her gray maintenance uniform hung loose on her frame, and a worn baseball cap covered most of her short brown hair. To anyone watching, she was just another member of the janitorial staff, invisible and unremarkable. But Sarah Mitchell was far from ordinary. She had arrived at the academy 3 weeks ago, taking a job that most people wouldn't look at twice. The work was hard, scrubbing floors, cleaning bathrooms, emptying trash bins. But Sarah never complained. She simply nodded when given instructions, kept her head down, and did her work. The cadets barely noticed her. When they did, it wasn't kind. "Hey, cleaning lady, you missed a spot," a tall cadet named Brad Hutchinson shouted one afternoon, deliberately kicking over a trash can she'd just emptied. His friends laughed as papers scattered across the hallway floor. Sarah paused, her jaw tight. For just a moment, something flickered in her eyes, something hard and dangerous. But then it was gone. She bent down without a word and began picking up the trash. "That's right," Brad sneered. "Know your place." If only he knew. Sarah had spent 20 years in the Navy SEALs, one of the first women to complete the brutal training program. She'd served in operations across 3 continents, earned 2 Navy Crosses, and commanded teams in situations most people couldn't imagine. Her code name in the field had been Phoenix, and enemy combatants had learned to fear it. But 6 months ago, everything changed. Sarah's last mission had gone wrong. Her team had been sent to rescue hostages from a compound in North Africa. The intelligence was bad. They'd walked into an ambush. 3 of her team members were killed. Sarah had fought her way out, carrying a wounded teammate on her back through 5 miles of hostile territory. She'd saved 7 lives that night, but she couldn't save everyone. The Navy had cleared her of any wrongdoing. The investigation showed she'd done everything right, but Sarah couldn't clear herself. The faces of the fallen haunted her dreams. She'd requested an honorable discharge, walked away from the only life she'd known, and disappeared. Her therapist had suggested she find purpose again, something to ground her. When Sarah learned that Fort Braxton Academy was struggling with a hazing problem, one that had sent 2 cadets to the hospital and was being covered up by officials who feared a scandal, she'd known what she had to do. She'd taken the janitor job under a false name, planning to investigate quietly and gather evidence. The Navy's Inspector General was waiting for her report, but Sarah had to be careful. If anyone discovered who she really was, the entire operation would fall apart. So she mopped floors and cleaned toilets, and she watched. The academy was supposed to be training the next generation of naval officers, but what Sarah saw troubled her deeply. A group of senior cadets, led by Brad Hutchinson and his friends Marcus Webb and Tyler Nash, ran the place like their personal kingdom. They targeted younger cadets, especially those they saw as weak. The hazing had become increasingly dangerous. And the officers in charge either didn't notice or didn't care. Sarah had been documenting everything, taking photos with a hidden camera, recording conversations, noting times and locations. She was building a case, but it was taking time, and she worried about how much damage might be done while she waited. On her 4th week at the academy, Sarah was cleaning the athletic facility when she heard raised voices from the locker room. She moved closer, her training making her footsteps silent. "You think you belong here," it was Brad's voice. "You're pathetic. Drop and give me 50 push-ups, now." I have a medical condition," a younger voice responded, shaking with fear. "My shoulder." "I don't care about your excuses," Marcus cut in. "You do what we say or we'll make your life miserable. Understand?" Sarah's hands clenched around her mop handle. Every instinct screamed at her to intervene, to walk in there and put these bullies in their place. In about 30 seconds, she could have all 3 of them on the ground, begging for mercy. But she couldn't, not yet. If she revealed herself now, they'd just cover their tracks. She needed solid evidence that would bring down not just these cadets, but the whole system protecting them. So she forced herself to walk away, her heart heavy. That evening, as Sarah was finishing her shift, She noticed Brad and his crew huddled together near the dining hall, looking at something on a phone and laughing. As she passed with her cart, she heard fragments of their conversation. Tomorrow night, showers, teach him a real lesson. Sarah's blood ran cold. She'd heard enough hazing stories to know that lessons in showers often turned violent. Whatever they were planning, it was going to be bad. She had a decision to make. She could wait, try to catch them in the act with her camera, or she could prevent whatever was about to happen. As she walked to her small apartment off base that night, Sarah knew her carefully planned investigation was about to get complicated. Sarah barely slept that night. She lay in her small bed, staring at the ceiling, weighing her options. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces of her fallen teammates. She'd failed to protect them. She wouldn't fail again. By morning, she'd made her decision. She would continue her normal routine, but she'd stay late, hidden, watching. If things got out of hand, she'd intervene. The investigation be damned. She wasn't going to let someone get seriously hurt on her watch. The day dragged on slowly. Sarah cleaned classrooms and hallways, all while keeping an eye on Brad and his friends. They were excited about something, whispering and grinning whenever they thought no one was watching. Around lunchtime, Sarah spotted their target. His name was Danny Chen, a first-year cadet who looked like he weighed maybe 130 pounds soaking wet. He had thick glasses and walked with a slight limp, an old injury from what Sarah had overheard. He was exactly the kind of person Brad's group loved to torment. Sarah had seen Danny before. He studied harder than most, stayed late in the library, and never caused trouble. He didn't deserve whatever they had planned. At 6 o'clock, most of the staff went home. Sarah made a show of clocking out, then circled back through a side entrance. She knew the academy's blind spots by now, the places where cameras didn't reach. She made her way to the athletic building and found a supply closet with a view of the shower entrance. And she waited. Time moved like molasses. 7 o'clock came and went, then 8. Sarah began to wonder if she'd misunderstood, if maybe they'd changed their plans. Then she heard footsteps. Brad, Marcus, and Tyler appeared in the hallway, looking around to make sure they were alone. A moment later, they practically dragged Danny Chen around the corner. The young cadet looked terrified. "Please," Danny was saying, his voice cracking. "I didn't do anything wrong, "Shut up," Brad snapped. "You exist, that's enough." They shoved him into the shower room. Sarah moved from the closet, positioning herself closer, her phone ready to record. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. Years of training had taught her to stay calm under pressure. Inside the shower room, she could hear them taunting Danny. "Strip," Marcus ordered. "We're going to teach you what happens to weaklings in this man's navy." "No," Danny said, and Sarah felt a flash of respect for him. Scared as he was standing his ground. "You can't make me." "Can't we?" Tyler laughed. Sarah heard the sound of a scuffle. Danny cried out. That was enough. She stepped into the doorway of the shower room, her phone camera already recording. "That's enough," she said quietly. All 4 cadets froze. Brad turned, his face twisted with anger. "What the hell? Get lost, cleaning lady. This doesn't concern you." "Let him go," Sarah said, her voice calm but carrying an edge of command that made even Brad hesitate for a second. "Or what?" Marcus stepped forward, trying to look intimidating. "You gonna stop us, old woman?" Sarah was 42, and she'd been called worse. She didn't move, didn't react. She just held the phone steady, making sure she got clear footage of their faces. "I'm recording this," she said. "All of it. The assault, the hazing, everything. You let him go now and maybe, you won't spend the next 10 years in a military prison." Brad's face went red. "You think anyone cares what some janitor says? Give me that phone." He lunged at her. It was the mistake Sarah had been half expecting. In one smooth motion, she sidestepped, caught his wrist, and twisted. Brad went down hard. His arm locked in a control hold that SEALs learned in their first month of training. He yelped in pain. "What the?" Marcus started forward, but Sarah's free hand came up in a gesture that stopped him cold. There was something in her eyes now, something that said she could handle all three of them without breaking a sweat. "Danny," Sarah said, not taking her eyes off the others. "Go to the commandant's office. Now, tell him what happened here. Tell him Sarah Mitchell sent you and that he needs to call Admiral James Hendricks at NAVSB-CWAR immediately. Can you do that?" Danny, pressed against the wall, nodded frantically. He grabbed his shirt and ran. Tyler made a move toward the door to stop him, but Sarah shifted her weight. "Don't," she said simply. He froze. "Let me go." Brad was squirming, but Sarah's hold was perfect. She could keep him there all night if she needed to. "Who are you?" Marcus demanded, some of the bravado draining from his voice. "Someone who's been watching you three for weeks," Sarah said. "Someone who has documented every incident, every threat, every instance of hazing. Someone who's built a case that's going to end your naval careers before they even start." "You're bluffing," Tyler said, but he didn't sound sure. "Am I?" Sarah met his eyes. "I have 47 photographs, 16 video recordings, and testimony from 5 other cadets you've terrorized. I have evidence of the Academy's administration ignoring reports and covering up injuries. I have enough to bring this whole corrupt system down." The color drained from Brad's face. "You can't. Who are you?" "Right now, I'm a janitor," Sarah said. "But once upon a time, I was someone who made grown men in war zones afraid to sleep at night. And you three just made the biggest mistake of your lives." Footsteps echoed in the hallway, running footsteps. The commandant was coming, and he wasn't alone. Sarah held Brad down and waited. Her mission had just changed dramatically, but she felt no regret. Some things were more important than perfect plans. The commandant arrived with 2 military police officers and Danny Chen trailing behind them. Commandant Richard Porter was a barrel-chested man in his 50s with steel-gray hair and a permanent scowl. He stopped in the doorway of the shower room, taking in the scene with widening eyes. "What in God's name is going on here?" he demanded. Sarah released Brad, who scrambled away from her, clutching his wrist. "These 3 cadets were assaulting Cadet Chen," she said calmly. "I intervened and detained them until proper authorities could arrive." "She attacked me," Brad shouted. "This crazy janitor attacked me. I want her arrested." Porter's eyes narrowed. "Mitchell, is it? I'm going to need you to come with us and explain yourself." "Of course, sir," Sarah said. She turned to the MPs. "I have video evidence of the assault on my phone, along with documentation of numerous other hazing incidents at this facility. I'll be happy to provide it all." "Video evidence?" Porter's face went pale. "Now wait just a minute. I believe Cadet Chen mentioned I asked him to contact Admiral Hendricks," Sarah continued, her tone professional and unruffled. "Has that call been made?" "Admiral Hendricks," Porter sputtered. "Why would we contact NAVSB-CWAR over a simple disciplinary matter?" "Because I requested it," Sarah said. "And because this stopped being a simple disciplinary matter about 3 weeks ago when I started documenting systematic abuse and cover-ups at this academy." The MPs exchanged glances. The older one, a sergeant named Tors, stepped forward. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with us to the commandant's office. We can sort this all out there." "Absolutely," Sarah agreed. As they walked through the hallways, a crowd of cadets began to gather, drawn by the commotion. Sarah could see them whispering, pointing. Word was spreading fast. In the commandant's office, Porter positioned himself behind his desk like it was a fortress. "Now, Mitchell, or whatever your real name is." "My real name is Sarah Mitchell," she said quietly. "That part wasn't a lie." "You've made some very serious accusations," Porter continued. "Accusations about this academy and its practices. Do you have any idea the damage you could do to this institution's reputation?" Sarah met his eyes steadily. "With respect, sir, this institution's reputation is exactly the problem. You've allowed a culture of abuse to flourish because you're more worried about appearances than about the young men and women under your command." "How dare you?" A knock on the door interrupted him. A young ensign poked her head in. "Sir, there's an Admiral Hendricks on the phone for you. He says it's urgent." Porter's jaw worked. Tell him I'm in a meeting. He said to tell you it concerns Operation Phoenix recovery, the ensign said. He was quite insistent. The room went silent. Sarah saw understanding dawn on Sergeant Torr's face. He was old enough to have heard the stories. His eyes widened as he looked at her with new recognition. Porter grabbed the phone. This is Commandant Porter. Yes, Admiral, I see. But, sir, there must be some mistake. His face grew progressively more ashen. Yes, sir, right away, sir. I understand, sir. He hung up slowly, like a man in a daze. When he looked at Sarah, there was something close to fear in his eyes. You're Captain Sarah Mitchell, he said hoarsely. Navy SEAL, 2 Navy Crosses, 3 Bronze Stars, the Phoenix. The MPs straightened unconsciously, their demeanor changing entirely. Former captain, Sarah corrected gently. I resigned my commission 6 months ago. The Admiral is sending investigators from the Inspector General's office, Porter said, his voice hollow. They'll be here in the morning, he said. He swallowed hard. He said I'm to offer you complete cooperation and access to any files you request. That's correct, Sarah said. He also said, Porter continued, looking like he might be sick, that I'm to consider myself under investigation as well, for negligence and failure to maintain proper discipline. Sarah felt no satisfaction in his distress, only weariness. Sir, with respect, cadets have been hospitalized under your watch. Others have left the academy traumatized. This should never have been allowed to continue. Porter slumped in his chair. I thought, the old ways, toughening them up. There's a difference between making someone tough and breaking them, Sarah said. Between discipline and cruelty. That's a line that was crossed here repeatedly, and you allowed it. Sergeant Torres cleared his throat. Captain, I mean Ms. Mitchell, what do you need from us tonight? I need Brad Hutchinson, Marcus Webb, and Tyler Nash confined to quarters pending investigation, Sarah said. I need Cadet Chen checked by medical and given protective supervision, and I need access to incident reports for the past 2 years. You'll have it all, Torres said immediately. The office door burst open. Brad's father, a tall man in an expensive suit, stormed in with a lawyer in tow. I'm Congressman Hutchinson, and I demand to know why my son is being held like a criminal. Sarah turned to face him. Your son assaulted a fellow cadet tonight, Congressman. It was recorded. He's also implicated in multiple other hazing incidents, some of which resulted in hospitalizations. That's a lie, Hutchinson blustered. My boy is a leader. He was just maintaining discipline. Your boy, Sarah said quietly, was caught on camera preparing to assault a cadet in the showers, along with threatening him and using physical force. That's not leadership. That's criminal behavior. The lawyer leaned in to whisper to Hutchinson. The congressman's face went through several shades of red and purple. Do you know who I am? He finally spluttered. I do, Sarah said. Do you know who I am? Some janitor with delusions. Captain Sarah Mitchell, United States Navy SEALs, retired, Sergeant Torres interjected. 2 Navy Crosses, sir. One of the most decorated special operators of her generation. The lawyer's eyes widened. He whispered something urgent to Hutchinson. Sarah stepped closer to the congressman. Your son is going to face justice, Congressman. And if you attempt to interfere with this investigation, I will make it my personal mission to ensure that everyone knows exactly what kind of man raises a boy who thinks he can terrorize others without consequences. Hutchinson opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time in probably years, he had nothing to say. News spread through Fort Braxton Academy like wildfire. By morning, everyone knew that the quiet janitor who'd cleaned their floors was actually a legendary Navy SEAL. Cadets who'd ignored Sarah or mocked her now couldn't meet her eyes. The ones she'd been protecting looked at her like she was a guardian angel. Sarah spent the night in a conference room, organizing her evidence for the Inspector General's team. She had everything meticulously documented: dates, times, witnesses, photographs. It was a devastating case. At dawn, Danny Chen knocked on the door. He'd been cleared by medical, just bruises and a sprained wrist. But the emotional damage ran deeper. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "can I talk to you?" "Of course, Danny, sit down." Sarah gestured to a chair. He sat, fidgeting with his hands. "Why did you help me? You didn't have to, you could have just watched." Sarah was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "A few months ago, I lost 3 members of my team. Good people who trusted me to bring them home safely. I couldn't save them, and it's something I'll carry for the rest of my life." Danny listened, his eyes wide behind his glasses. "But I can save you," Sarah continued. "I can make sure what happened to you doesn't happen to anyone else. That's worth risking my investigation. That's worth everything." "I wanted to quit," Danny admitted. "After the first month, I wanted to go home. My parents, they worked so hard to send me here, but I was so scared all the time." "You're not going to quit," Sarah said firmly. "You're going to stay, and you're going to become an excellent officer, because you have something Brad Hutchinson and his friends will never have." "What's that?" "Actual courage. They mistake cruelty for strength, fear for respect. But you stood up to them tonight, even terrified. That's real bravery." Tears rolled down Danny's face. "Thank you," he whispered. At 8 o'clock, the Inspector General's team arrived, 4 stern-faced officers led by Captain Jennifer Walsh. Sarah had served with Walsh in Afghanistan. The woman was brilliant, thorough, and absolutely incorruptible. "Phoenix," Walsh said, using Sarah's old call sign. She shook Sarah's hand warmly. "When Admiral Hendricks said you'd surfaced, I volunteered immediately. What have you got for me?" Sarah handed over her files. Everything. 3 weeks of documentation. Testimony from 8 cadets willing to go on record, video and photographic evidence, and a paper trail showing that Commandant Porter received and dismissed at least 12 formal complaints. Walsh's expression grew darker as she reviewed the materials. "This is extensive, excellent work." "There's more," Sarah said. "I've identified a pattern. Every cadet who filed a complaint either withdrew it under pressure or was transferred out of the academy. Someone has been actively suppressing this." "Who?" "I believe it goes higher than Porter," Sarah said. "The Academy's Board of Trustees includes several influential people who have children or grandchildren enrolled here. They have a vested interest in maintaining the Academy's reputation." Walsh nodded grimly. "We'll follow every lead, I promise you that." The investigation moved swiftly. Brad, Marcus, and Tyler were formally charged under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Their phones and computers were seized, revealing even more evidence. Group chats where they bragged about their punishments, photos of injured cadets, plans for future hazing. Congressman Hutchinson tried to intervene, calling in favors, making threats. But Walsh was untouchable, and Sarah's evidence was ironclad. Within a week, his son was facing a court-martial. The academy itself was placed under temporary oversight. Commandant Porter resigned, as did 2 other senior officers. The Board of Trustees was dissolved and reconstituted with new members committed to reform. But the biggest changes were cultural. Sarah stayed on, not as a janitor now, but as a special consultant to the new commandant, Captain Maria Rodriguez. Rodriguez was a no-nonsense officer who'd come up through the ranks and had zero tolerance for the old boys club mentality. Together, they implemented new policies: anonymous reporting systems, regular third-party reviews, mandatory anti-hazing training, and severe consequences for any form of abuse. Sarah also started teaching. Not formally, she wasn't ready for that, but she held informal sessions where cadets could ask questions, learn about real leadership, hear stories about what it meant to serve. The young people responded with hunger. They wanted to be better, wanted to learn from someone who'd actually done the things they dreamed about. One afternoon, Sarah was walking across the parade ground when a group of senior cadets approached her. She tensed slightly, old habits, but they looked nervous, not hostile. "Captain Mitchell," one of them said, "we wanted to apologize. We saw what was happening. Some of us even participated. We thought it was just tradition, just the way things were done." "But it was wrong," another added, "and we should have stood up like you did." Sarah studied them. They were young, barely out of high school. They'd been following the example set for them, not knowing any better. "What matters now," she said, "is what you do going forward. You can't change the past, but you can make sure the future is better. Can you do that?" They nodded earnestly. "Then do it. Be the kind of officers who protect their people, not terrorize them. Be the kind of leaders worth following." As they walked away, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in months: hope. Maybe she couldn't save everyone. Maybe she'd always carry the weight of those she'd lost. But she could make a difference here, could help shape a new generation of officers who understood that real strength came from protecting others, not dominating them. 3 months later, Fort Braxton Academy was transformed. The change wasn't just policy, it was in the air, in the way cadets carried themselves, in how they treated each other. Sarah walked through the halls now in her consultant role, no longer invisible. Cadets greeted her respectfully, sought her advice, looked up to her. It was strange after weeks of being ignored, but she was adjusting. The court-martial of Brad Hutchinson and his friends had concluded. All three were convicted. Brad and Marcus received dishonorable discharges and prison sentences. Tyler got a slightly lighter sentence for cooperating with investigators. The message was clear. This behavior would not be tolerated, regardless of who your father was. Congressman Hutchinson's career had imploded. Voters didn't take kindly to learning he'd tried to protect his son from consequences of criminal behavior. He'd announced he wouldn't seek re-election. The broader investigation had uncovered a rot that went beyond Fort Braxton. 5 other military academies were now under review. Sarah's case had sparked a nationwide reckoning with hazing culture. Admiral Hendricks visited one crisp November morning. Sarah met him in the commandant's office, now occupied by Captain Rodriguez. "Captain Mitchell," Hendricks said, though Sarah had asked him repeatedly to drop the rank, "I wanted to thank you personally, what you did here. It took courage." "I just did what needed doing, sir," Sarah said. "You did more than that. You reminded us all what service really means." He paused. "I have a question for you. Would you consider coming back?" Sarah's heart skipped. "Sir." "Not to the SEALs. I know you need to be done with that. But NAVSBCWAR needs someone to overhaul our training programs, root out hazing and toxic culture across all special operations. Someone with your experience, your moral clarity. Someone people will listen to." Sarah was quiet, processing. Part of her had thought she was finished with the Navy, that her time was over. But this was different. "It would mean reinstating your commission," Hendricks continued. "And it wouldn't be easy. You'd be making enemies, challenging systems that have been in place for decades." "When has anything worthwhile ever been easy?" Sarah said softly. Hendricks smiled. "Is that a yes?" Sarah looked out the window at the parade ground, where cadets were drilling. She saw Danny Chen among them, standing tall now, no longer the frightened kid from 3 months ago. She saw the changes she'd helped create, the lives she'd protected. But she also thought about all the other Danny Chens out there, at other bases, other academies, suffering in silence. About systems that needed fixing, cultures that needed changing. "Yes, sir," she said. "It's a yes." The news of Sarah's reinstatement spread quickly. The response was mixed. Some celebrated it, others grumbled about political correctness and changing traditions. Sarah didn't care about the grumblers. She cared about the young faces lighting up with hope, about the messages from survivors of hazing thanking her for speaking up. On her last day at Fort Braxton before transferring to her new position, the academy held a special ceremony. Sarah tried to decline. She didn't want the fuss, but Rodriguez insisted. The entire academy assembled on the parade ground. Sarah stood uncomfortably at attention while Rodriguez spoke. 3 months ago, this academy was broken. We had lost our way, confused cruelty with discipline, abuse with tradition. Then Captain Sarah Mitchell came to us. She could have exposed us immediately, destroyed us with the evidence she'd gathered. Instead, she gave us a chance to be better. Rodriguez turned to Sarah. "Captain Mitchell, the Phoenix, you rose from the ashes of tragedy to help us rise from ours. This academy and the Navy are better because of you." The cadets erupted in applause. Sarah saw tears on some faces. She saw Danny Chen standing proud, his family beside him. They'd come from California for this. After the ceremony, Danny approached her. "Captain Mitchell, I wanted you to know. I've decided to specialize in leadership and ethics when I graduate. I want to help make sure what happened here never happens anywhere else." Sarah felt her throat tighten. "You're going to be an outstanding officer, Danny." "Because of you," he said simply. "No," Sarah corrected gently. "Because of you, I just showed you that you had the strength all along." As Sarah drove away from Fort Braxton that evening, she looked in her rearview mirror at the academy shrinking behind her. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the losses, the pain, the guilt that had nearly destroyed her. She thought about her fallen teammates. She would always grieve them, always carry the weight of that mission. But she understood now that their legacy didn't have to be defined by how they died. It could be defined by how Sarah lived, by the people she protected, the systems she changed, the lives she saved. Admiral Hendricks had given her a new call sign for her new role, Guardian, but Sarah thought Phoenix was still fitting. She had burned down to ashes, lost everything that defined her. But from those ashes, she'd risen again, not as the warrior she'd been, but as something new, a protector, a reformer, a voice for those who couldn't speak. Her phone buzzed with a text from Captain Walsh. "First assignment ready when you are. Naval Academy, Annapolis. Reports of systematic hazing in the wrestling program. Interested." Sarah smiled and typed back, "Send me everything you have." She had work to do. There were more Danny Chens out there who needed a guardian angel. More systems that needed dismantling. More battles to fight, not with weapons now, but with truth, evidence, and the kind of moral courage that changed institutions from within. The Phoenix had risen, and she was just getting started. As the sun set over the highway, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not the absence of pain. She would always carry her scars. But peace that came from purpose, from knowing that her suffering had meaning, that the worst moments of her life had somehow led her to exactly where she needed to be. She'd been forged in fire, broken down, and rebuilt. And now she would use everything she'd learned, everything she'd endured, to make sure that others didn't have to suffer as she had, as her team had, as Danny Chen and countless others had. The road ahead was long. The work would be hard. There would be resistance, setbacks, and days when she wanted to quit. But Sarah Mitchell had never quit anything in her life. She'd earned her call sign Phoenix not by avoiding the flames, but by walking through them and emerging stronger on the other side.